Hey guys, it has been a long time, but I am here to do a review of the television series Sherlock Season 2. Like I said, it's been a long while since I did my review of Season 1. I've been meaning to do this review for at least a month, and every time I'm planning out the videos that I'm going to do for that week, I usually come up with everything that I'm going to be doing, and then it's like, oh, okay, I don't need to do my review of Sherlock Season 2 this week. I'll just save that for next week. And then what happens is the following week I wind up planning out all the reviews and videos for that week, and I once again fail to do a review of Sherlock Season 2. But here I am doing the video for Sherlock Season 2. I think this season is better than Season 1. If you will recall, in my review of Season 1, the very first episode really hits the audience hard in the face with, look at us over here, we're Sherlock set in the present day. And they try really hard to make everyone understand that this is different than every other Sherlock that they've seen before. And I think after the first episode, the show was a lot better of just being a good show without trying so hard to remind everyone how different it was from every other version of Sherlock. This season, from the beginning, is really good. I don't feel like there's a single episode in this season that really stands out as being significantly a step down from all the other episodes. Of course, when there's only 3 episodes per season, it's really easy to say, okay, this is the best episode and this is the worst episode. And with Season 1, I felt like even when you only have 1 episode that's not really all that good, it's still kind of a problem because that means that 1/3 of the entire season is really bad. Season 2 doesn't have that problem. I think that all of the episodes in this season are pretty good. The big exception to this is how this season picks up the Season 1 cliffhanger. I firmly believe that Stephen Moffat, the creator of this series and the showrunner of this series, has absolutely no business doing season cliffhangers. He is the absolute worst person in all dimensions, past, present, and future, to try and do a cliffhanger for a television series successfully. If you will recall, Season 1 of this series ends with John Watson and Sherlock Holmes meeting Moriarty for the first time. Moriarty was being played up all throughout Season 1 as being the big bad that's behind everything that these guys have been encountering in this series. And finally they meet him and he says, well, since you've met me, now I'm going to have you killed. I can't have you going around telling people what I look like. And then we see all these red dots on Sherlock and John's face, and it's like, oh, okay, he has snipers on the roof. They're about to kill Sherlock and John. Then Sherlock pulls the gun on Moriarty. Oh no, what's going to happen? And then the resolution to that is one of the most disappointing things I've ever seen in the world. Not the most disappointing, that happens at the beginning of Season 3. One of the most disappointing. What happens to get these guys out of this jam? Moriarty gets a phone call and then he seemingly forgets that he has these guys that he was about to kill. I poo you not, that is how this series resolves the Season 1 cliffhanger. Now this is made slightly better in the sense that Moriarty, it is established in Season 1, he is a career criminal. He makes his living by helping other people commit crimes. He's sort of a criminal advisor, and he gets a phone call from somebody at the very beginning of Season 2 who needs Sherlock Holmes alive in order to commit a very grand crime. So that's why he doesn't have Sherlock killed. It is still a huge disappointment when we are curious how Sherlock is going to get out of this and ultimately a phone call does it. That's kind of a disappointment. Even if it does tie into the plot of the episode, it is still inexcusable. Other than that, this season is really remarkably good. The first episode deals with Irene Adler, and it deals with her in such a way where we are pretty certain that we are never going to see her again after this episode, which I was very disappointed with because I would have really liked to have seen her again show up later, but that is neither here nor there. The first episode of this season, really good because Irene Adler, for those of you who are not familiar with the Sherlock Holmes lore, she is one of the only people who is a mental match for Sherlock Holmes. And in this episode, she is a match for Sherlock up until the very end. I'm not going to spoil it too much for you, but I think it's a given to say that Sherlock does win at the end, since it is his show. So this episode was really good. I kind of wish that it could have found a better way to have resolved the Season 1 cliffhanger, but that's really my only complaint for this entire season, for that matter. The second episode of this season, I've heard a lot of people say, in general, this series with the second episode of each season kind of disappoints them. I have not had that experience. I found in Season 1, the first episode of the season was the worst one, and I really liked the episode with the triads. And in this season, we have an update of the Hound of the Baskerville story, which is probably one of the most well-known Sherlock Holmes stories ever, and this episode does a lot to change that, and I didn't mind. But then again, I'm one of those people, I very rarely mind when the source material is changed when you're doing an adaptation. Mostly because if you want to read the original Hound of the Baskerville story, you can just go and read the Hound of the Baskerville story. I don't need the exact same story to be happening on screen. I don't mind if you make changes to the story, and this episode makes a lot of changes. Now the question is, are these changes better? Well, I don't really think we can answer that because this episode is done in like 2012, and the original Hound of the Baskerville story happened 110 years earlier. So in the original story, we are not going to have a government organization called Hound. We are not going to have anything that happens in this episode in the original story. But I feel like that's okay because the original story as is seems like something that would almost be beneath this version of Sherlock. It would be something that he would solve in the first 2 minutes of the episode. It would not be worth an entire episode. So for the most part, I was okay with all of the changes that this episode made to the Hound of the Baskerville story. One problem that I did have with this episode is a little bit of a spoiler, so if you have not seen this episode, go ahead and turn off the video now, go watch the episode, then come back here. The whole premise of this episode is that you have this little kid who witnesses his father getting killed by this other guy wearing a t-shirt that says Hound on it. And then in his mind, he kind of changed the events so that he saw a dog killing his father. And then he grows up and there's this whole legend surrounding this town that there was a giant devil dog that killed this little boy's father. The problem that I have with this is that Hound was a secret CIA project. There would be no reason at all that the people involved in a secret CIA project would make a t-shirt for all of the members of the project to then wear. The whole conceit of this entire episode rests on a very ludicrous idea. I don't mind the idea that there's a secret SHIELD-esque CIA project that exists in the world of Sherlock. I don't mind the idea that it's a hallucinogen that makes everyone think that they see a devil dog. What I do mind is the really, really dumb idea that a secret CIA project would then make t-shirts in order for this entire episode to even exist. The final episode of this season is probably one of my favorite. This one not only deals with Moriarty once again, which the relationship between Sherlock and Moriarty is one of my favorite things about this series. Not only does it deal with Moriarty again, but it ups the ante from the last time that we saw him. And it does so in a really big and really interesting way. And like Season 1, this season ends on a cliffhanger that you are going to be disappointed by how it is resolved in Season 3. At least that's how I was. I'm not here to review Season 3 just yet, but I will say that the way that Season 3 tries to tie up the Season 2 cliffhanger is a gigantic disappointment for me, and I am certain that I am not the only one who feels this way. But like I said, I am not here to review Season 3. Basically, this episode deals with the air quotes death of Sherlock Holmes, which, a little backstory, in the original Sherlock Holmes novels, Sherlock Holmes dies. The creator of Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle, he intended for that to be the end of it, but a whole lot of people really wanted Sherlock Holmes to come back, and so Arthur Conan Doyle kind of felt like he was forced to bring his character back to life. So then he does another story that reveals that Sherlock only faked his death. And this kind of deals with the first half of that. The Season 3 premiere kind of deals with the second half of that. And honestly, I would almost be okay with this being the last episode of the series after having seen the Season 3 premiere. I know I'm kind of veering into talking about Season 3, and I really don't want this video to be that much longer than it already is, but I feel like if this season had ended where it was, a lot of people would have been furious with how it ended, but I think this would have been a nice cap-off for the series. And I will talk more about that if and when I get around to reviewing Season 3. The only other thing that I want to say in this video is that I feel like this season has themes that are a little bit more clear than it was in Season 1. Season 1 was thematically a little disjointed. We didn't have an overarching theme of that season other than the building of friendship between these two characters. This season, I think the theme is very clearly Sherlock's humanity. The first episode deals with Irene Adler, and we get to see that even though Sherlock puts up this facade of not caring about anything and being very cold and crass about everything, especially like in the Season 1 finale we saw a lot of that, even though he puts up this facade of being like that, he does have human emotions, and we do get to see this in the episode with Irene Adler. And then episode 2 of this season kind of takes a step back, and it puts Sherlock more in the position that he was in Season 1. At one point he says something like, "Oh yes, I understand, it's human sentiment." And then he says, "No, I don't really understand. What is that all about?" And even though this kind of feels a little bit disjointed from the first episode, I feel like this is consistent with Sherlock. He does have human emotions, but he is going to pretend like he does not. And then the third episode of this season is maybe one of the best to deal with Sherlock and his emotions. Once again, we see that deep down he really does care about the people who are around him. He is not this robot who doesn't care about anything and doesn't have human emotions. This season overall was really great about handling that, and I feel like that is why in the future this season is the season that I will go back and rewatch more than any of the other seasons of this series. And that's about all I have to say here. Overall, I really like this season. I hope you guys like this season as well. And if you like this video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will be back tomorrow with some other kind of video. So until then, I'll see you guys later. Have a great day.